Good evening and welcome to our special presentation of the documentary Understanding Joy, the Devastation of a Gambling Addiction. I'm your host, Yolanda Vasquez. With the growing number of casino-based gambling opportunities available in Maryland and nearby out-of-state locations, problem gambling has become an epidemic. There are an estimated 150,000 problem gamblers in our state alone. Last year, the American Psychiatric Association reclassified pathological gambling as an addiction, a revision reflecting new research that helps us to understand its effects. To explore this, Academy Award-winning filmmaker Susan Hadari and John Anglem produced a revealing documentary on the destructive nature of gambling addiction. It features Joy, a woman whose addiction overcame her sense of morality and drove her to embezzle large amounts of money from her employers. Throughout the piece, she struggles to explain her disease to her children, to the world, and more importantly, to herself. Our one-hour special will also feature live interviews with experts and a call-in phone bank with counselors who are trained to respond to viewers' questions or requests for help. The phone number to call is on your screen. Or you can email us at mdcepg@gmail.com. We'll be back to discuss more, but for now, here's part one of Understanding Joy.
A devastating gambling addiction controlled her.
I would take my paycheck and go up there and lose every penny of it in an hour.
Her need to gamble grew more intense, overpowering her sense of right and wrong.
And so I started taking money from the company I worked for. And I'm going to put it right back. You'll never know.
But Joy can only keep taking. Her brain's been hijacked by her addiction.
I knew I was in deep, deep trouble, and I was going to pay a huge price.
Without even realizing she had an addiction, Joy has gambled away her life.
And she called my daughter and told her. I will never forget the look on her face. You did what? Again? I've destroyed so many people's faith, and I've betrayed so many people, and I've lied to so many people, and it's a horrible addiction. It's horrible. It's insidious. I don't think there's been a word developed yet to describe the pain, the damage, the betrayal, the guilt, the shame that goes with it. You know, you hide something for so long. I just went up there and did what I did. Nobody knew where I was or what I was doing, and if they asked, I lied.
My understanding is that your lawyer wanted me to meet with you to do an evaluation for the court?
Yes.
Okay, great. Why don't you just kind of start with where that started?
I worked for a company for a little over 5 years. I was stealing money. I was embezzling funds from them all those years. And I got caught. I'm facing very serious charges, jail time, but it's all due to this gambling addiction. I just kept doing it. I couldn't stop. I knew it was wrong. But
What are the rough amounts we're talking about?
It is an astronomical number that I personally don't believe is correct, but they're saying $700,000.
So what kind of gambling were you doing?
Slot machines.
Okay. Pretty much exclusively?
That's it.
Okay.
We know that in the brain of folks who compulsively gamble, that part of the natural reward center of our brain is sort of hijacked by the behavior. The brain is craving this rush, which it can't produce on its own after a certain point, and it needs the person to get it externally from the gambling behavior.
So in that sense, it's like being a drug addict. It's like sitting at the slot machine and being hooked up to an IV morphine drip.
They can just kind of block out everything. It almost becomes trance-like.
It's the only time I was comfortable. There's like a bubble around me that protected me from everything outside of there. I didn't care how I got the money. I just wanted to be there. I mean, where else can you go and be in your own world and sit down at a machine and just take a deep breath, and I just relaxed. I was home. I was away from reality. And a glass of water. Okay, I'll go get that. Hey guys, I got an order. That's a job. Order up. I've always done this on the side to supplement my income. There you go, dear. But now it's my only income. You need anything else? Thank you. You're welcome. You don't think you have a problem. You don't want to believe you have a problem. I got to give this up. Even though everything you're doing is crazy. Another addiction. Staying out for 2 and 3 days to gamble. Driving up and down the road to get money to gamble. I mean, these are pretty obvious signs that you have a problem.
It's really a preoccupation with it. So people, even when they're not gambling, are strategizing. They're thinking about how wonderful it'll be to get there. And it's just constant obsessions with the behavior.
I would take my paycheck that I earned and go up there and lose every penny of it in an hour. And I would drive all the way back, go get another check, go to a liquor store and cash it, and go back up there. That's sick. You know, it's really sick. The things that you'll do, the steps that you would take to fill that need, to get your high. That was my high.
The behavior has to be ratcheted up a notch. You have to gamble with more money. You have to take riskier gambles in order to produce the same chemical rush that you had when you started doing the behavior. And this leads to sort of a vicious cycle where the person really is sort of bound by their brain and they feel almost robotic.
I've lost everything. I'm nothing. Some pots and pans I have left. Don't look at that, that's just a mess. And my bed and the TV. That's it. That's what my life is now. Since I lost everything. I have a bed, a TV, and a few boxes in my clothes. I had to watch General Hospital. I had 2-bedroom apartment. Come on, buddy. Just about every Sunday, my whole family was there. That's why I had that little bench there, and we would laugh and cook out and eat. That's gone. There aren't any more good get-togethers. We don't get together anymore like that. They feel betrayed. They feel, you know, I've lied to them for so long. And yeah, they're mad as hell.
Yeah. What's been going on?
There's a lot of shame. I'm embarrassed. I feel horrible for what my kids are going through and yet what's still to come, because I haven't been sentenced yet. And it's just, I just can't get over the fact that I did this and that I stole money and that it went against everything I taught my kids when they were growing up. You know, you don't steal, you don't lie, you don't cheat.
So really, how did they go?
They just can't believe it. It's shock. My son, my oldest, he was really mad at me. Shock. Disappointment.
But what about that number? But what do you think the real number is?
I don't remember. I have screwed up their lives. Big time.
It's almost a survival feeling drive for many people, that they feel that without it, they cannot go on.
I would go by myself. And I would lie to people, not telling them I was going by myself, because I thought they're going to look at me like I'm nuts. Why would you drive all the way up there by yourself? You know. So, and it just snowballed, and it got to the point where I was spending my rent money, all my bills. I didn't care. And I was chasing it. You know, I thought, I'm going to hit it, I'm going to win, and I can pay all my bills. And so I started taking money from the company I worked for. And with every intention of, well, I'm just going to take this $200 and I'm going to put it right back. They'll never know.
People in that situation often tell themselves, well, you know what, I'll take money, but then I'll win. I'll pay back the money before anybody notices, and then everything will be fine. And people fool themselves into believing that because, in part, they want to gamble so desperately. And they want it to be sort of consistent with who they are. A good person doesn't steal, but they might borrow.
Well, then what happens is you lose, and you can't put it back. So now you got to steal more money in order to try and win it back, steal more money. And so that spiral simply continues down the drain.
You want French fries or home fries?
So very good people, very moral people, are driven to doing things that are horribly immoral and illegal.
You okay? And you get a salad? What kind of dressing? This will probably be my life for the rest of my life, my job, my career. Here you go, sir.
Okay.
Hot or cold?
Don't know yet.
I'd rather use my mind. I love working with numbers, but you know, I'll never be able to do that again. Who's going to hire a bookkeeper who steals? What?
It's for you. Everything's cool. Have a good one.
Thank you. What did he just gave me $40? That's crazy. Yeah. He and I were talking about gambling. He's a gambler. He plays blackjack. And I told him that gambling, I lost everything. Maybe he just felt sorry for me. Isn't that crazy? What?
Hello, I'm Yolanda Vasquez, and welcome back to our studios at MPT and our presentation of Understanding Joy, the Devastation of a Gambling Addiction. Are you or someone you know having difficulty with a gambling addiction? If you have a question or need help, we have a live phone bank of counselors who are here to provide you with answers. The phone number to call is on your screen, or you can simply email us at mdcepg@gmail.com. With me right now are Christopher Welsh, Medical Director from the Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, and Stephen Martino, Director of the Maryland State Lottery. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So, Christopher, let's start off by talking with you. You had to do an evaluation of Joy in the piece. Why did you need to do that?
So her counselor, where she lived in Frederick, they didn't have a psychiatrist there that really knew about gambling. But the main reason is that a lot of people with gambling problems also have other mental health issues.
Like what?
Depression, anxiety. Somebody who's manic depressive or bipolar, they may gamble a lot when they're in a manic episode. So it was one, to find out, did she have any of these other mental health issues going on, as well as a lot of people with gambling problems also have other substance abuse issues.
So that was the need for you to do the evaluation. Is that pretty typical?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's so often that people have these other issues going on as well.
What did you discover about Joy's gambling addiction? What did you discover about her through the whole addiction process?
Well, we'll hear more about it, but this had been something that had been going on for a while. She had dealt with it, came back to haunt her. It's not really clear how much she had other issues like depression beforehand, but certainly as this started, it really kind of snowballed for her.
Stephen, I'm going to bring you in the conversation. The state has been dealing with the repercussions of problem gambling for quite some time because we've had casinos that have been in nearby states, as we mentioned earlier, Atlantic City, West Virginia, and Delaware nearby. But now that the casinos are here in-state, are you noticing an uptick in problem gamblers?
Well, most of that information would go to the operation that's run by Dr. Welsh at the University of Maryland School of Medicine.
So they'll keep track of that?
They do. They run the problem gambling toll-free helpline number, so the 800-522-4700, which as the gaming regulator, we work aggressively to make sure that that information is out. And that's really our goal. We have we have oversight over the casinos in the state. So we set parameters, rules, and regulations. We make sure that before they open, they have a responsible gambling plan. We make sure that their employees are trained every year to identify people who may have a gambling problem, particularly on the gaming floor. And so that's really our role. But we're a full partner, and we've really embraced a very aggressive approach to interdiction and awareness of responsible gambling and problem gambling.
You and I were talking earlier, there was a prevalence study that was done back in 2010. This was before the casinos sort of hit Maryland hard. Right. What did they discover then? Because one of the things I think people think, more casinos, a higher incidence of problem gamblers, but not necessarily.
Well, my recollection from that study, which was done in the summer through the fall of 2010, so really only overlapping about a month from where the first casino in Maryland opened in Perryville in September of 2010, is that it showed an incident within the population of Maryland at about 3.5% or so of people who self-identified as problem gamblers, and then of that subset, about 1% who might be identified as pathological gamblers. But yet there were really no casinos in the state at that time. So clearly, Maryland was having problems with with problem gambling. But people were going out of state. They were going to Delaware, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, going up to Atlantic City, and they were importing a lot of the troubles that they were having with problem gambling. I think another prevalence study will be done. I think the state plans to do one about every 5 years. So, next year we should have some sense as to whether, the introduction of more casinos in the state have had an impact on the prevalence of problem gambling.
Let's talk, Christopher, we're going to go back to you and talk a little bit more about the Center on the Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling. It's sort of a one-stop shop, if you will, for gambling addicts. Tell us a little bit more about it and how it all came to be.
So Maryland was actually very progressive in the legislation that allows for casinos. Built into that was a certain amount of money goes into a fund to help people with gambling problems. So our center was started in July of 2012, and the main things that we do, we have, as Steve mentioned, the 24-hour call center where someone can call a spouse, somebody who's concerned, a boss if they were worried.
Just out of curiosity, where is that number posted besides your website? Are there stickers anywhere outside of casinos and taxi cabs, places where problem gamblers may actually view it and say, maybe I should call this number? I didn't mean to interrupt, but just curious where they are.
Every casino. It's actually in the back of every lottery ticket.
And that's part of what our responsibility has been and how we have tried to spread the word about responsible gambling awareness and problem gambling issues. We make sure that phone number is on the back of every lottery ticket that's sold in the state, whether it's a Mega Millions ticket or an instant ticket, a Keno ticket. It is also posted at all of the casinos. It's there's pamphlets throughout the casino. It's part of all the advertising. If you listen to a radio advertisement or a TV commercial from a Maryland casino, they're required to broadcast that number along with the problem gambling website so that people can go and find help.
Okay, so it's visible. I mean, people who need help should be able to find it. Tell me a little bit more about the center, if you will, please, Christopher.
So we also do public awareness, which part of making this documentary was to find different ways. Last year we ran at different times different public service announcements on radio, on TV. Okay. We also go around the entire state and train existing mental health and drug and alcohol counselors, many of whom don't know much about gambling, so we're trying to help them become more comfortable. As we have people calling in, then we can refer them wherever they are in the state to someone who's comfortable to work with them. Right. We also are working on different prevention initiatives in all levels of education and, young kids through college.
So there's a wide variety of things that you're doing. I want to get back over to Stephen if I can. I want to talk about programs that are in place to prevent problem gambling. One of them is called self-exclusion. Can you tell us more about that?
So we see self-exclusion as a tool of personal responsibility that we administer at the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. We know that there are people who have an issue with gambling. They know that they have an issue, and one of the ways that they're able to address that is by voluntarily excluding themselves from a casino. They sign up. You have to do it in person. You have to do it yourself. Someone else can't sign you up, a family member or a friend. And when you agree to do that, you agree that if you're found on the casino property, you can be charged with trespassing. If you win a jackpot, that jackpot can be confiscated. It actually goes to the problem gambling fund. But you're also then removed, your name is removed from all the marketing databases of all the casinos in the state. So no longer are you going to get the direct mail, the birthday card with $10 of free play to come. And again, it's a tool of personal responsibility. So far in the state, we've had nearly 450 people sign up for self-exclusion.
Wonderful. 30 seconds left. Christopher, I'll let you have the last word. What would you like to say to someone who's battling a gambling addiction?
Well, I think the main thing is for them and for loved ones to realize that this is something that you can get help for, that a lot of people feel very desperate and that they, everything is kind of crumbled around them, but there are people that can help them and to call, and we can help them find where to get that help.
Thank you so much, Christopher Welsh and Stephen Martino. We appreciate your time. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, gentlemen. And remember, at any time, if you have a question or need help with a gambling addiction, we have a live phone bank of counselors who can speak with you. The number is on your screen, or you can email us at mdcepg@gmail.com. And now, part 2 of Understanding Joy.
Is this the first time you had an issue with gambling?
No.
No, okay. So maybe go back. When was the first time?
About 12 years ago. I did the same thing. I worked for a company, started gambling. When I stole money from that company, it was over a period of, I think, a year and a half. And when I got caught the first time, I went to court and I was given probation, and I had restitution. And that was about it.
If somebody wants to abstain and then be in recovery, you damn sure better figure out why it is that you're doing what you're doing, or you guarantee that you're going to relapse or you're going to take on another addiction, because all those forces at work that gave birth to the addiction in the first place are still there.
I knew what I was doing was wrong, but somehow in our twisted thinking, in our screwed up mind, we don't know it's a problem. I'll probably never understand why. She pressed charges. I went to a lawyer and I got 90 days of house arrest, which I think I did about maybe 60 or 40, something like that. And it wasn't that bad.
And that was about it. I just went on my merry way, and there weren't many consequences other than the restitution, and I was on probation. And I guess I didn't gamble for about a year. I can't ever get the timeline straight in my head, but then I started again.
But in this particular case, that initial involvement of the courts in her first experience with gambling, where I believe it was 90-day home confinement and a certain degree of restitution, well, that was handling it in a traditional way. But nobody recognized the addiction. Nobody recognized the problem. Nobody fostered a treatment plan, a recovery dedication for her as an individual to make sure that it didn't happen again.
He is my best friend. I tell him everything, and you know what? He's never told one of my secrets. Not once. In almost 7 years.
That's a good boy. Come on, let's go.
I started going again, and I started losing my whole paycheck. And I couldn't pay my rent, and I couldn't pay my bills, and I lied to my boss. And I remember the first time I did it, and I felt really bad, and I thought, why am I doing this to this person who gave me a shot? To him, I'm a piece of crap. I'm a liar, I'm a thief, and I betrayed him. They want me in jail a long time.
And then when you started again, besides the compulsion and having the problem, was there anything else out of the ordinary going on in your life at that time, 5 years ago?
Well, I'd just broken up with someone who I thought I was going to marry. He found out about everything, about the time before, about getting in trouble, and it ended. And it was pretty hard to take.
And so is that when you started stealing from work and it got even more out of control? Okay.
So I went back to bartending, and then the man who owns the business that my last job came in there, and he needed a bookkeeper, and he knew my story. He knew the lady I stole the money from. And he said, you know what, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you a shot. Don't screw me over.
A real hallmark of any addiction, including gambling addiction, is continuing to use despite negative consequences. This is someone who years earlier had the same thing happen, was caught by a previous employer, and obviously fired, had to pay restitution, and so this was not a new thing for her.
You lose yourself, and you lose your sense of right and wrong, what's right and wrong. I'm an adult. I know that it's wrong to write a check that I'm not entitled to and take that money and go gamble it away. I know that's wrong.
People will describe it that they know that they're violating their moral codes, that they're doing all of these illegal behaviors, but they're so driven and then so desperate. Because once you start going down the hole and you start recognizing that now you're $40,000, $50,000 in debt, then desperation sets in, and it's a survival thing.
And why am I betraying him like this? But I didn't stop. I did it anyway, over and over and over again for years.
Well, first of all, we don't diminish it. The man's trust was violated. He hired Joy, acknowledged her initial problem because he knew about her first offense, gave her a shot and asked her not to screw him over. Certainly, you cannot diminish the victim's anger. And I think there is a corresponding responsibility to the greatest extent possible of holding the defendant responsible financially and trying to at least make amends in terms of what the victim has suffered. But there's a limit, because as you might well imagine in looking at the material in Joy's case, there's no way on God's earth she's ever going to be able to pay off $500,000 or better. And we have to steel ourselves to understand that this is a perfect example of why prevention and treatment should be undertaken. And I think the reclamation of individuals who are disease impaired, plus the bigger picture of trying to limit this problem in the future for a much wider array of people, overshadows, and I say it again with all due respect to the victim, overshadows that particular circumstance.
I knew one day I was going to get caught. Like I said, I had a little suicide bag I carried around with me. It was almost, please catch me. My boss said, I don't understand why we're not making any money. Joy, let's look online at the bank statement and see where we're spending money. And that was it. I knew I was dead in the water at that point. He's never looked at bank statement in 5 years. And so I went back to my office, grabbed whatever I could quickly, and just ran out the door. I knew I was in deep, deep trouble, and I was going to pay a huge price. And I knew there was a good chance that my kids would never talk to me again, my family, my friends. I knew it. I knew everything was just going down the drain at that minute, and it was my fault. I ran up the street. I actually tripped and fell, and I was shaking, and I was crying. My heart was beating so fast, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And my plan was go in this motel, take all these pills that I had been saving up for months and months, and die. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to die.
Well, most of the data shows that approximately 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 people with a gambling addiction has attempted suicide. And that's largely in response to their gambling problems. And I think it's not completely surprising when one sort of considers how utterly devastating gambling addiction can be to the person, but everyone around them. You know, there's some evidence to suggest that a person with a gambling problem negatively impacts about 8 to 9 other people.
And when you look at Joy's case, just think of it. Just think of if you involved yourself in some activity that you didn't like yourself for doing, that you were hurting others that you cared about, and you actually took the time to prepare a suicide kit. How absolutely astounding is that? That she was probably only a couple of clicks away from actually committing suicide.
Welcome back to our studios at MPT and our presentation of Understanding Joy, the Devastation of a Gambling Addiction. During this broadcast, we have a phone bank of counselors who are here to answer your questions. Are you or a loved one feeling the effects of a gambling addiction? Simply call the number on your screen, or you can email us at mdcepg@gmail.com. With me right now is Lori Rugel. She is the director of the Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Thank you for joining us, Lori.
Thank you for having us.
So, what are your thoughts on the scenario that's being played out with Joy? Is this pretty typical of a problem gambler?
You know, unfortunately, it is. I've seen many women with much the same issues. Gambling, starting later in life, not knowing what hit them, getting into legal troubles, doing time in prison, and these are folks who, you know, if they were overcharged at a store or got more change, they'd drive 10 miles back to return it. So very devastating for the family and the gambler.
When does it cross the line? When are you just a social gambler who's just out having fun, and then things go terribly awry as it did for Joy? Where is that line of demarcation, and what are the warning signs?
Yeah, I think the warning signs are becoming increasingly preoccupied, letting go of normal activities, family activities, birthdays, holidays, wanting to spend time with the gambling. Chasing losses. I lose and then I go back another day.
Does a gambler always think they're going to win? If they go back another time, they're going to hit?
It's always going to be different. And even with Joy taking the money, they don't classify it as stealing because I'm just borrowing it and I intend to pay it back. It's not like I'm going to use it for my own benefit.
Right.
It's just to tide me over till I get that win, and then I can make everything right. And they lose control. I'm only going to gamble for a few hours, and they're there the whole day. Only so much money, and they've gone to the ATM 5, 6 times, and they lose track, kind of in a brownout. And they start lying and hiding and deceiving themselves and everybody around them.
It's just a domino effect, one thing after another after another.
Right.
You're trying to cover up for this and making up, lies for this. Very deceptive.
And the brain really changes the same way as it does with a substance use disorder. The brain patterns change, and we have the research now that shows that. So people get locked in, and it's like dragging the brain out of that pattern of gambling, losing, getting depressed, and going back to gambling to try to make everything right.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. Joy talked about committing suicide as a way out. How common is that?
About 20% of all folks with a gambling disorder have made a suicide attempt, so it's very common for folks with this disorder, and you have to take statements about suicide very seriously, because when things fall apart, like they did for Joy, it happens very quickly, and you can be the best worker and a parent of the year in your community, and suddenly it's hitting the headlines that you're a thief, that you embezzled, and the sense of shame and guilt is so deep they don't see any other way out.
Are there triggers in life that cause you to go overboard? She talked about how she was in a relationship that kind of fell apart, and there were other things that were happening in her life, and I didn't know if somehow that just ramps up the gambling.
Well, I think any of us can be vulnerable given the right sets of circumstances, and there's certainly a genetic component, But circumstances are important, especially for women. It's often relationship issues, problems in a marriage, in a relationship, losses, the death of a spouse, the death of a child, the death of a parent, those kind of grief and loss issues, or just traumatic events, being in an abusive relationship. Rates of domestic violence are very high with this disorder, so a lot of different triggers.
What information is out there in regards to gender difference when it comes to problem gambling? Are women more inclined to become problem gamblers more so than men?
No, they're not. Being male still is a risk factor, but women unfortunately are catching up, and the pattern is different with women. Men often start earlier on and kind of get acculturated to gambling. Women tend to start later in life, and their progression from social gambling to problem gambling can be very rapid, 6 months rather than 6 years or 20 years like it often is for men.
You've been doing this for a long time, Lori,
Yes,
3 decades
I have.
plus, if not more. And one of the things I asked you about, what's the consistent characteristic of a problem gambler? And you said their resiliency.
Yeah, you know, with the level of problems they're facing, like Joy presents, the level of debt, the level of family disruption, I don't know if I could get through that. But they cope, and the power of recovery to transform a person's life. So once you seek help and reach out and realize that there is a pathway out, these people have wonderful, happy, joyful, meaningful lives, and they use the pain of their addiction to really develop compassion and understanding and a lot of strength.
We've got about a minute left. You know, a lot of people will say it's very hard to sympathize with Joy.
Yeah.
You know, she did this to herself. How could she not be anywhere but in a jail cell? What do you say to people who don't understand that this really is an addiction?
Yeah, it's really hard to understand compared to putting a substance in your body. And I think the biology of it, that we know, we have brain scans that show even one episode of playing slot machines changes brain patterns. So the behavior does the same thing biochemically to your brain that any addictive substance does, and makes it just as hard to go through the withdrawal, through the cravings, through the tolerance that substances
It's real.
do.
It's real. It's very real. Lori Rugel, it was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate your time and insight.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
And if you or someone you know is struggling with a gambling addiction, please call our phone bank. We have counselors on hand who are ready to answer your questions and concerns. The number is listed at the bottom of the screen, and our counselors are standing by. Or you can email us at mdcepg@gmail.com. And now, the conclusion of Understanding Joy.
Today is called a pre-trial hearing. Again, I have to face my ex-employer and all his employees and his girlfriend and his accountant, and that's the hardest part. My stomach's in knots. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Joy just found out we are assigned to Judge Dwyer in courtroom 5. I'm meeting with prosecutor at 1:45. It took them about 8 months, maybe 9 months, to get a number, to go through all the checks and everything. They're saying $780,000. I know that that's not accurate, and it's probably, I'm thinking half that, but that's still phenomenal. You know, it might as well be 10 million. You know, it's just, it's not attainable. I'm never going to be able to pay that back. The stares I get and the looks I get and it's not fun. There's the courthouse. Beautiful Frederick County Courthouse. The prosecutor made an offer of doing 25 years, all but 10 suspended. And I think that's the max. And because it's a second offense, thinking I'm scared. Not looking forward to this and the many other court dates I'll probably have. My lawyer just texted me and said she's talking to the prosecutor. I don't know what that means. Maybe they're trying to come up with a deal. Send me away for 5 years instead of 10.
It's an addiction, but it's difficult for people to understand that because they look at the nature of the activity that Joy involved herself in. They look at the fact that it was a second offense in a period of years, and they begin to forget the fact that this is a disease. Instead, they look at it as a volitional, intentional act to benefit herself, to harm others financially, and as a result, that's where the dichotomy comes in society.
Especially given that this was her second offense that she was caught, no prison time, just kind of go to treatment and, we all recognize this is a disorder, but part of the disorder, certainly for her, was breaking the law in order to continue her addictions.
And part of what society is having to grapple with is that an addiction, or is that just someone who needs a punitive and deterrent approach within the criminal justice system? And that's the conundrum we face.
All of these addictions are really brain illnesses. In general, we have quite a big stigma against addiction. We tend to think people should be able to control their behavior. Why is this person addicted to gambling, alcohol, drugs? Just stop. What's wrong with you? Just stop doing it. I don't do it. Why do you do it? That's the sort of general sort of approach.
People look at the types of activities that gamblers involve themselves in. Criminal activity, domestic violence, bankruptcies, foreclosures, usurping their children's money, stealing from businesses. And they look at it as volitional, they look at it as intentional, because there's no societal perception of gambling as a disease.
So court is April 15th.
Yep.
And that's your sentencing?
I don't know.
Did you lose these?
I don't know.
You might have the plea agreement by then, and they'll just agree.
How they came to some decision that they're going to try to come up with a plea agreement between now and April 15th, which is the next court date.
They don't care how much or what, they just want to put you in jail. That's pretty much what it sounds like.
I'm trying to believe it's an addiction and I couldn't help myself. But the shame and the guilt is so overwhelming to have to look at your family and say, I have an addiction. That's why I did this. That's why you hurt us. That's why you destroyed our family. That's why you destroyed your own life. Because you have an addiction? Yeah, that's why. That's not a good enough answer for people.
So you keep feeling that you're a bad person?
Yeah.
Because of that?
All this because of gambling, A slot machine has brought me to the point where it's just hard to look in the mirror and accept this is what I did. And, I just keep hearing you're a good person, you just did a bad thing. And I can't accept that.
Your traditional judge will look at it as a repetitive criminal, will look at it as somebody who chose to take some steps to violate the law, not only harmed themselves, but harmed other people and businesses and otherwise, who didn't deserve to be harmed, and therefore we will punish, we will deter.
The judge isn't going to look at me and say, you're a compulsive gambler, you have a gambling addiction, I'm not going to put you in jail. You don't belong in jail. You belong getting help and helping other people. That's not what's going to happen. He's going to say, you're going to jail. You're not giving me that crap that you're an addict.
But I think that, there's one thing about the criminal system plays out in its own way, but it should have at least enough understanding of addictions that appropriate treatment, if not in the prisons, or as people are discharged from the prisons, should be implemented. Because we do know that if people don't get the right help, they're just going to continue to do the addictive behavior. And then the problem may resurface again with more criminal problems.
So what I look at in terms of Joy's situation, it is the perfect example of what the worst case scenario can be with compulsive gambling. If you don't have prevention, if you don't have treatment, if you don't have recognition within the criminal justice system, you have society no better off than it was before, because there's no guarantee there won't be a recidivistic activity. And what did that accomplish?
But I just wanted so badly to know why, you know. But, you know, at the end of the day, I have to look in the mirror, and it was me. It doesn't matter why, I think. It was me. They're decisions I made. And for whatever reasons they are, I did it. I'm here. This is as low as it gets, unless you're dead. When he said 15 years, all suspended but 8, I know my face must have been utter, pure shock. That night when I was sitting in a holding cell in the county jail and I lost it. And that door just shut. Phew. Worst feeling I have ever had. I've been here almost 5 months now. It's sad. It's very, very sad. And what I've done and the things that I've taken from people and myself, I just at times don't even feel worthy of being here. I feel like I would rather be dead than live in a prison. I wanted to be gone. I did not want to be here. And oh, it was so bad. It's just, I can't even explain it. Coming here is because of an addiction, and not because I stole money, not because of what I did to anybody, but the bottom line is because of gambling. And it was really, really hard coming here. No, the world doesn't understand. No.
Pretty compelling stuff. Well, welcome back to our studios at MPT and our presentation of Understanding Joy, the Devastation of a Gambling Addiction. I know it may not be easy, but if you or a loved one is reeling from the effects of a gambling addiction, now is the time to get help. We have a phone bank of counselors in the studio to answer your questions. Just call the number on your screen, or you can email us at mdcepg@gmail.com. With me right now is Michael Rosen, Network Development Coordinator from the Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So let's first start off by asking you, what exactly do you do? Because when I asked you earlier, you sounded like you were a jack of all trades.
It's like a utility infielder.
You do a little bit of everything.
A little bit. As you know, the Center of Excellence for Problem Gambling is not pro or anti-gambling. Our mission is to inform people about the possible dangers of gambling. In addition to that, very, very important, we train clinicians that their career predominantly was drugs and alcohol to the understanding. And, you know, you talked about the change in the DSM-5, that now gambling is recognized in the same category as alcohol and drugs, which opens up a whole door to such hidden addiction. So this is my job, is to get the message out, to network with people, to make people aware of gambling addiction.
We're going to talk about your gambling addiction that you had that spanned several decades. But what did you think about Joy in the end with this piece?
Well, I think, Joy has come to a situation where she realizes what's happened. She wants to continue to help herself. She's even gotten a message across that she would like to start a GA, Gambling Anonymous, meeting in the penitentiary.
Very good.
And through the producers of this movie, they got to me, and on April 1st, we will have the first GA meeting in the penitentiary.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your gambling addiction. What was that like to live with that day in and day out? And we're talking about from 1950s to almost to the 80s before you finally said enough is enough.
Yeah, I gambled for 28 years. I started very, very innocently as entertainment, as an escape. Basically there are two types of gamblers. There's the escape gambler and the action gambler. I started gambling when I was 10 years old. I actually ran a casino in summer camp where we used baseball cards. I had a crap table and a blackjack table and a roulette wheel. And that very, very quickly progressed to, by the time I was 13, I was in a poker game for money. And as years went on and the more money I made, the more intense the addiction became.
What finally turned things around for you?
What turned things around is I saw my life going to hell. I had my relationship with my wife fell apart. I had adult daughter that would not talk to me. I was in danger of blowing a career. And I started to go to the rooms, the Gamblers Anonymous rooms, and found there the support that I needed, the fellowship, and actually was sober from 1981 to 2006.
And then you had a relapse.
Major relapse.
But you're better now.
Yeah,
better
5 years sober.
Good for you.
5 years sober.
Does it bother you that most people don't recognize gambling addiction as an illness?
It bothers me in the sense because gambling today is 10, 15, and some people even say 20 years behind alcohol and drugs. As a matter of fact, the founders of Gamblers Anonymous in 1957, 22 years after AA was founded, the two founders in Los Angeles were recovering alcoholics. They had shifted their addiction, and that was 22 years later, and it's almost like those 22 years were still trying to catch up.
Yeah, it's amazing. Understanding Joy focuses primarily on gambling addiction, but there are other addictions out there, and you and I were talking earlier, and you said sports is huge, right?
Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
I mean, Joy was only into slot machines.
Right.
But today you've got, horse racing for sure. And the gambling existed in the state of Maryland, the problems long before there were casinos. But you've got sports betting,
horse racing,
bingo.
I never thought of
bingo. People don't think about bingo.
Yeah. Even lottery tickets.
Lady, go out and she's going to church.
Yeah, right.
She's
gambling.
There. She's gambling.
Yeah.
And then the big one, and the one that took me down, was the stock market. And especially today with the advancement of the internet, you can sit in your man cave or in your kitchen, and all you have to do is with a brokerage outfit, and you can gamble 24 hours a day.
Yeah, no human contact.
And no one knows anything about it.
None the wiser.
It's a hidden addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no biological test. You can't take a blood test.
To determine it. Although there is some type of genetic tracing and something that's hereditary. We were talking about that, possibly.
There is studies, and like any other addictions, the child of an alcoholic has a better chance of becoming an alcoholic than someone who is not the child of an alcoholic.
Of course.
But it's nurture and nature, and you never know, what happens.
You've dealt with a lot of problem gamblers who've sought help. Why is it so important to seek help? And can you beat this? You're living proof, but is it difficult for some people?
Well, those of us that believe in the disease theory, we believe that we have a disease. I am a pathological gambler. I'll always be a pathological gambler. The key is not to be gambling.
Right, in the first place.
And when I was gambling, I used to do everything I possibly could to increase my odds of winning. In answer to your question, there are some people that can go to a therapist and have individual therapy and it helps them. Some group therapy, some intensive outpatient, and some GA. The more you do, the better you have a chance of staying in recovery. Not recovered, staying in recovery.
It sounds kind of harsh. I don't mean anything bad when I ask this question. But if you didn't get help, do you think that you would have ended up in the situation Joy is in
Possibly.
right now?
I mean, I was fortunate. I never did anything illegal. Okay, but I definitely tested the waters. and he could have easily lost my job. I was at one time chief operating officer of a company traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And after retirement, when I had the relapse, almost blew everything I had.
That's
and the help, I'm very much indebted to therapy and the rooms.
Well, I'm sure that the center is glad to have you on their side. Michael Rosen, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your insight on all of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Now, keep in mind, gambling addiction is a very serious problem. So if you or someone you know is dealing with a gambling addiction, there is help available. We have a live phone bank of counselors who can talk to you and answer any questions or concerns you might have. Simply call the number on your screen, or you can email us at mdcepg@gmail.com. And if you're not ready to call now, that's fine too. We'll be here after the program is over if you want to place your call then. For all of us here at Maryland Public Television, I'm Yolanda Vasquez. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a good night.